I really hate to tell you this, Bungie, and I know you've put so much time and effort into telling us otherwise, but Destiny is an MMO. Seriously, it's just the original Guild Wars, but with 1 or 2 more guns. But don't feel bad about that. You basically translated Halo into an MMO, and it's pretty good. I mean, you got the shooting and the bad guys, and everyone's their own little special Master Chief. It's fine. It's good. It's good. Good job with that. Just kind of wish that your marketing didn't think one of my favorite video game genres was a swear word. It's been a few weeks since Destiny 2 landed on the PC after a wicked delay from the console launch. Thank you very much for that, Bungie. So I think I've spent enough time with it to shout about it on the internet. So what is Destiny exactly? I would understand if you don't know, especially if you're a PC gamer like me, because the first one was a console exclusive for no discernible reason. It's a first-person shooter that borrows heavily from MMORPG mechanics like loot grinding, gearing up, and raiding. It's also like apparently a really good competitive shooter, I guess, but I mean, who would care about that? It's about a distant future where humanity has fallen and now lives underneath a giant golf ball that occasionally resurrects dead people and gives them superpowers. All this to hopefully prevent mankind, and also probably itself, from being butt-fucked by every other species in the solar system. Species that include ancient noble houses of scavengers from long-dead stars, locust necromancers who use actual freaking magic, space and time-bending robots that aren't actually robots that can materialize stuff out of thin air and are like this crazy super consciousness, and fat space Romans. Space Romans. Can you guess which one factors heavily into this game? Can you guess? And all of this is wrapped in dense and lush world building that refuses simple interpretations. But you could pretty much learn that from any Wikipedia article on the game. I'm gonna dig in, and we're gonna see what makes Destiny so interesting. We're gonna see if it's worth yours or anybody's time. I mean, I've already invested the time. I'm never getting that back. You guys better be grateful. Have you ever played a game that is just so deeply gripping and drags you kicking and screaming into the story whether you want to or not? It engages you on every level and emotionally connects you with its characters. It's the kind of game you can't put down because you need to know what's coming next. Well, don't worry, because Destiny 2 does not do that at all. Destiny 2 seems to have the same problem as Bungie's now bedfellows Blizzard has when it comes to writing video game stories. Really, really exceptionally good at building a world, not super good at making stories in it. Destiny 2 certainly has a more compelling narrative than its predecessor, Destiny 1, but then again, mowing your lawn has a better narrative than Destiny 1. Destiny 2 starts out really strong, but sadly, once you get past the first few missions, the plot kind of falls off a cliff into weird side arcs that don't really relate too much into the main arc, and stuff that just simply isn't well explained. Like, why do the Vanguards, the leaders of the Guardians, decide to fuck off to other planets instead of, helping the thousands of refugees who wind up needing help from Hawthorne and other city outcasts? It doesn't make any sense. It's basically just an excuse to go to these other planets. Why can't you think up literally any other excuse to go to these planets? This isn't making sense, so let me do a quick summary of the plot here. If you want to avoid spoilers to Destiny 2, skip to this timestamp here. Otherwise, I'm going to start talking about the game in 3, 2, 1. Go. So just a quick primer on Destiny lore so you kind of know what's going on when I explain the plot. A long time ago, humanity came upon something called the Traveler on Mars. The Traveler is this giant white golf ball that terraforms planets and gives people superpowers. And it managed to elevate humanity into a super awesome golden age. But it didn't last forever. Eventually the Traveler's enemies showed up, a bunch of minions and some nebulous force called the Darkness, which basically fucked up everything. So essentially humanity was pushed all the way back to the last city, simply called The City, a city that lies underneath the Traveler. In order to protect itself and assumedly the rest of mankind, the Traveler created ghosts, which go out and find corpses of long-dead humans and resurrect them. These resurrected humans are called Guardians. They are immortal, can come back from death, and fire huge crazy magic out of their fingertips. These Guardians then have to go forth and protect humanity and hopefully eventually take back some of our lost colonies. Some stuff happens in the first Destiny, but it really doesn't matter for Destiny 2. They could be played separately from one another. But that basically catches us up to the start of the plot of Destiny 2. Destiny 2 is essentially about this guy. His name is Gaul. He's the leader of the Cabal's Red Legion, who are this elite group of warriors. They come in and sack the city, and it starts really strong. We get to see all of our main characters from the first game fighting as hard as they can to defend the city. We get to see these locations that we're very used to, like the tower, get utterly leveled by Cabal attacks. It builds up a lot of animosity. And then finally, at the end, Gauld shows up himself and just lays us out without even trying. Steals the light so we have no superpowers, then kicks us off the side of his ship without even caring to learn who we are.
And your light is mine.
This is a really good setup. The stakes are laid out, the city's been taken, the Traveler's been taken, and all of the Guardians have lost the ability to come back from death and throw crazy fireballs out of their hands. Now we have to build back up from here. And it starts off pretty good from here too. We meet Hawthorne, who's this sniper who lives out in the wilds, and you start helping refugees come in. But eventually, things just start to get kind of corny. In true Chosen One fashion, we just happen to be lucky enough to be the only Guardian to find the what's-it lying in the forest that gives us our superpowers back. So I guess we're like destined to save the world or some other junk. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, get ready because this is a Chosen One plot. We get a communication from Zavala, the leader of the Titans, that he's on the planet Titan, which I guess kind of works. So while we're on Titan, we run into a bunch of enemies who are completely unrelated to the plot, and then eventually find a computer core that tells us that Gaul has a super weapon called the Almighty. It's effectively a Death Star that blows up suns. I take issue with this plot point, to be quite honest with you. It seems kind of superfluous. Like, it doesn't really have a point in being here. In fact, think about it this way. If you take the Almighty out of Destiny 2, it doesn't actually affect the plot. Gaul already has control of the Traveler, he already has stolen our light, and we have effectively already lost the fight. To me, this subplot about the Almighty really just serves to pad out the third act with an extra couple missions. In fact, when you do destroy the Almighty, Gaul barely seems to notice. But whatever, I guess that's silly. After discovering this horrible death ray, we get another communication, and I guess it's time to move on to the next planet. Next stop, Nessus, an unstable centaur in the outer solar system. Now, this is where we get to hang out with Cade 6, which is Nathan Fillion's character, and I like Nathan Fillion's character. He's actually got some really good dialogue, but it turns out he gets upstaged by Failsafe. Probably the best and most interesting character in the entire game. Failsafe is an unstable artificial intelligence from the Golden Age that's part of a crashed starship on Nessus, and she's actually hilarious. She's got probably some of the best lines in the game, and a perfect delivery for her character. Failsafe is like the highlight of Destiny 2 in terms of, like, characters for me.
You are good at destroying the Vex. Much better than my crew was.
I'm almost afraid to ask, but Failsafe, what happened to the Exodus Black crew?
Only my captain can access those memories. And he's super dead.
After releasing Cade 6 from the teleporter network, we're told that Ikora, the vanguard of the Warlocks, is probably on the moon of Io. We go there and she's just, like, right there. She's just standing on a cliff and we fly up to her and she's like, hey, and we're like, hey, and then we talk about stuff. And then she sends us on a mission. This is weird. This is a weird introduction. Every other character has been somehow in need of our help immediately upon landing. Zavala wants us to abandon Titan the second we land, and we complete a mission to prove to him that no, we could probably set up a base here and it'll be all good. Cade is stuck in a teleporter network, and we don't get back to him until the end of Nessus's arc. But Ikora is just standing there. Like, we fly up and just teleport on top of her, and it's like, there. Like, I feel like there's a mission missing here. Like, there was supposed to be something at the beginning where we track down Ikora or something, but no. We just fly to the planet, she's right there, and like, hey, what's up? Apparently she was the hardest one to find. Doesn't make much sense to me. But Io itself is not that interesting a planet either. It's smaller than the others, about the same size as Titan. It's got really uninteresting missions and really irritating enemies. It's the primary hub of the Taken. We're basically just a mishmash of all the other races with a couple of extra mechanics thrown in. Io is not super fun. It's boring to look at. It's just not a great planet. But fortunately, we are winding the story up to the climax now. All that's left now is to destroy the Almighty, take back the city, and kick Gaul's ass. And we've been waiting for that the entire game. But where has he been this whole time? Gaul doesn't really show up at all in the plot while you're getting the vanguards back together and trotting through the galaxy. The only time you actually see him are these cutscenes in between story missions in which he's gabbing philosophical with the speaker who he's taken hostage. They talk about how Gaul wants the Traveler to choose him, despite the fact that they are very capable of extracting the light whether the Traveler wants it to or not. It's bizarre. Gaul spends most of the game completely disconnected from the events the player is taking part in. He's not like other villains who constantly are showing up or communicating with us to threaten us and insult us and build more animosity. In fact, my annoyance with Gaul really sinks as the game goes on, only returning when I have to fight him at the very end of the game, and even then it's just because he's kind of an annoying boss. I don't think I'm the only person to feel like Gaul is kind of wasted by the plot. He's not utilized very effectively. He just talks to the speaker the whole time, and he gets angry at the very end when his buddy kills the speaker somehow. I don't understand how this is supposed to kill the speaker. So we're back on Earth, and it's time to wrap this story up. So we show up at this cruiser, kill a general, steal his ship, fly to the Almighty, and sabotage its core. This causes the whole thing to kind of blow up and be useless. Then we come back. The rest of the Vanguard have attacked the city and begun the final battle. We fight our way through the city streets, teleport up to Gaul's ship through Cade's teleporter network, and then confront him directly. We defeat him, but turns out he got the light anyways, so he's immortal, we're fucked. But then the Traveler decides to actually do something, wakes up and kills him. Good game, credits roll, awesome. At the end of the day, this plot is basically around to set us up for the end game and introduce all the races and planets, and I guess it does that job just fine. We learn about all of the potential enemies we'll be fighting along the way from here on out. We meet all of the characters, and then we defeat the one big bad, and now we've got other big bads showing up in the expansions. The story is fine, it's functional. I think it could have been done a lot better, especially when we consider the world around it. This is because Destiny's universe is so well realized within the game. Bungie is really good at world building, as I said earlier, and the Destiny universe has always fascinated me. I consider it up there with Dark Souls or Dragon Age in terms of just density and the ability to engage somebody. There's clearly a universe here with rules that the plot abides by, and I love that. I love world building and things like that. That's why I really dug the Grimoire cards, and I'm kind of pissed off they removed those, despite the fact that the Grimoire cards were terribly implemented. Now we just have some lore scannables that tell us a quick story and don't ever actually get stored anywhere, so if you want to hear it again, you have to trudge all the way back to the bowels of wherever the hell you found it. There is a reason that there are a lot of YouTubers who specialize in Destiny lore, because it's so interesting, so dense, lush, and there's a lot of room to speculate within it, and that's awesome. They've clearly written a world that is really, really well realized. I just kind of wish that it turned up in their games and in their stories. That would be nice. As is, if you want to get deep into the world of Destiny, you're not going to find it in the game's plot. You're not even really going to find it that well in the game itself. You're going to have to go digging. There's a lot of wikis and grimoire cards, and as I said earlier, YouTubers who dig really deep into Destiny lore. And if you want to get into the lore, that's where you're going to have to go, unfortunately. One thing that this game is infuriatingly bad at, it's actually telling you about its world. It does some great visual storytelling and a whole lot of interesting writing when it does decide to write things down, like in item descriptions, but other than that, there is not much here. So like Bungie, if there's one thing that I would love you to take away from this, if you ever do watch my videos, it's, could you like patch in some sort of codex? That would be like super awesome, or maybe include it in the next Destiny 3, which you blatantly teased at the end. That would be super cool. But I've been talking for like 10 minutes about this game's plot. There's other stuff I want to talk about. Let's move on. Move on. So we all know the real reason why anybody plays this game.
Incoming! All ready, my shield!
Bungie has been making shooters for decades. They've got a formula that works to make some of the best shooty bang bang games on the market. After all, they made all the good Halos, and also Marathon, a game you haven't played because it was a Mac game in the 90s, and the only place that had Macintosh computers in the 90s was your middle school. In terms of just raw shooting mechanics, I don't honestly think there is a better company out there than Bungie. But what is a shooty bang bang game without the guns? And this is essentially just Borderlands played straight, so there's a lot of guns to choose from. This is some pretty top-tier DACA. You got auto rifles, pulse rifles, scout rifles, submachine guns, sidearms, hand cannons, shotguns, fusion rifles, grenade launchers, rocket launchers, fucking swords. I ain't never heard of a gun called a sword. And generally, all of them feel really good to fire and have different traits and abilities that make them good for different scenarios, except for sidearms. Sidearms are just fucking bullshit. SMGs are really good at delivering a lot of damage up close, scout rifles are great for precision shots from range, sniper rifles, the same thing, missile launchers are great for pumping out ridiculous amounts of damage in a small area. They all serve their purposes, and you can carry up to 3. One of them is a kinetic weapon that fires regular old bullets. Another is an elemental weapon that fires some sort of elementally tuned thing, and then a power weapon, which is a more powerful weapon that often does more damage than the other two. And generally, they all feel really good to fire. They have great sound design, good kick and recoil, they feel weighty and powerful, and enemies have really generous headshot boxes that explode when you hit them. But based on their track record, it's only news when Bungie manages to somehow fuck up a first-person shooter. So let's look at everything else. So Destiny 2's central gameplay loop basically boils down to shoot things, collect loot. You participate in missions in which you shoot things and then collect loot at the end. You jump into public events in which you shoot things and collect loot at the end. You take part in just wandering around where you shoot things and collect loot in the end. Shooting and looting are just two great tastes that taste great together. And if you love shooting things, Destiny 2 works. It's fun to just engage in the gunplay, DACA your way around open world maps or strikes or what have you. Shooting is a pretty fun thing to do in the game, and basically, if you like the gunplay, you're probably gonna like Destiny 2. And Bungie was sure to give you plenty of opportunities to shoot things. There are plenty of enemies just waiting to accept some ammunition delivered at the speed of sound in Destiny's 4 major zones. But in addition to that, you have public events that spawn randomly, little patrols that give you a single objective to do, more fleshed out adventures that act kind of like side quests. Outside of the open world, though, there are other things to take part in. Strikes act like little instanced dungeons that you go into with a few friends, Go through a few challenges and then fight a boss for a little bit of loot. Nightfalls are harder versions of that on a timer with different modifiers attached. And then, of course, there's the Raid, a 6-person combat puzzle that's just, I love it. Also, I guess there's Crucible if you wanted to do PvP, I guess. With all of this stuff lined up for the endgame, you'd probably be forgiven in thinking that Destiny 2 is probably set for some long-term play. Unfortunately, there's some problems. The way you advance your character once you've hit the maximum player level in Destiny 2 is something called light level. Light level effectively works exactly like item level. It's a measure of the power of your gear across your entire character. Effectively, it's just how good your stuff is. Whenever you get a new gun, you can immediately tell if it's better than your old one by just looking at the light level. There's some exceptions to this, like exotics, which have special traits you won't find on anything else, but generally, your light level is your most important indicator of power. The game also scales all of your rewards to be upgrades most of the time. You're generally going to be picking up stuff that's improving your character, especially right after you hit level 20. So whether you go back to Nessus and do a public event, or try a strike, or do some other high-level content somewhere else in the game, you're generally going to be getting something that's an upgrade. To a point. Once you start hitting around item level 265, the engrams and items that you get from a vast majority of Destiny 2's content stop keeping up with your character level. Eventually, you're getting stuff that's generally weaker than the stuff you're wearing. Now, this generally would make sense to most people. I mean, eventually you're going to hit a point where the game wants to push you into more and more engaging and difficult content. My problem is that this happened to me about 3 to 4 hours after I hit level 20 and completed the campaign. It was a very short process. And unfortunately, once you hit item level 265, outside of getting the occasional exotic engram, which is extremely rare in most cases, you just stop getting upgrades from most of the fun content in the game. Things like lost sectors and public events are no longer rewarding activities after this point. You just stop really powering up outside of a very small number of activities, like the Raid, or Nightfall, or Crucible. Now this would be fine, but another problem immediately starts rearing its ugly head at this point. All of these activities that power you up after this point are on a weekly lockout. You can only actually complete them once a week. The big problem that this all boils down to is that once you hit Destiny 2's endgame, you very quickly run out of things to do. You get to the point where you spend 20 minutes in a Nightfall and you spend an hour in Crucible a week, and you might do the Raid, which is probably about 3 hours depending on your group. And that's it. You run out of reasons to log into the game. My main theory on this one is mostly because Destiny 2 is trying to capture a model that Blizzard has been turning to lately called micro-sessions. Generally, Destiny would prefer that you log in more often for less time than stay logged in for 8 hours at a time. This is also characterized by an apparent soft cap on experience gain, which you continue to get after level 20 to unlock cosmetics through bright engrams, of 30 minutes of game time. That sounds a lot like Final Fantasy XIV 1.0's old fatigue system, which encouraged you to stop playing the game after a certain amount of time. If you think you can solve this problem by simply rolling an alt and enjoying more Destiny 2 time, unfortunately there's something they've done to the game to stopgap you there too. When you're playing on an alt and that alt reaches level 20 and starts the endgame process, they're not only getting gear scaled off their own current equipment, but they're also getting gear scaled off of your highest light level character's weapons, which means you pick up gear very quickly. While it took 3 to 4 hours to gear my first character to 265, it took 20 minutes to do my second. I mostly just turned in reputation tokens at the various guys and turned in all my gunsmithing tokens, and I had the gear almost immediately. It was really fast. This is the big problem at the crux of Destiny 2. people just run out of stuff to do that's engaging or in any way rewarding to them. And unless Destiny finds a way to fix this in their upcoming expansions, I see this as something that could potentially kill the game dead. This is also accentuated by a second problem, something I've talked about a lot on this channel. Destiny 2 has no integrated social features. It has clans and fire teams and guided games which allow people to group up, but outside of that, there's no way to communicate with the rest of the community in the game. Generally, you have to go to out-of-game means such as forums or the subreddit. They don't even have a region chat. There's no way to talk to someone who's not on your friend list or in your fire team in that game. This actually makes me worry about people coming into Destiny 2 alone, that they're not going to be able to find people to play with and therefore are going to wash out of the game real fast. Now, this all might sound kind of hopeless and crappy, like Destiny 2's endgame is really over in the blink of an eye and you're geared for raiding but only logging in once a week to do a couple of things that maybe take 2 hours tops outside of the raid, which takes another 3. That might be a little bit of doom and gloom, but there is some serious hope, because I got into the Leviathan raid in Destiny 2 for the last couple of weeks, and I gotta say, it is fan-fucking-tastic. I'm not gonna go into too much detail about it here because I want you guys to be able to discover this for yourselves if you want to. But Destiny 2's raid content is singularly a reason to play the game. It is interesting and compelling. Its encounters are incredibly creative and reliant heavily on teamwork. These people expect you to be in voice comms because some of these bosses would be simply impossible without instantaneous communication between your team members. Destiny 2's raid content is this compelling mix of creative combat puzzles that are really not much like many of the other games that are on the market right now. If you're looking for fun raids, these are probably the most fun I've had since, like, WildStar raiding, and for me, that's saying a lot. It might not be saying a lot for, like, most of the rest of the internet, but I like WildStar. It's a good game. Destiny 2's raids could be a video unto themselves, and knowing my channel, they probably will be in the near future. At this point, the Leviathan is literally the only reason I play the game. I go in every week with the people from my Discord, plug, and I have a hell of a time. It's the only reason I'm interested in Curse of Osiris and whatever the second expansion about Rasputin is. It's just brilliant content. If there's one suggestion I could make to Bungie outside of, like, fix the micro-session problem, it is take the ideas from your raids, this excellent teamwork-based puzzle content, and implement it elsewhere in the game as well. Create public events that focus on this instead of it just being a generic shoot the thing in the leg until it falls over fight. The raids are really the reason I would recommend this game to anyone. So, you know, you should probably make more of them and make them awesome. But I've been talking for a very long time about Destiny 2, and I think you're getting the picture that I'm drawing. So let's sum this up with some closing thoughts. At the end of the day, Destiny 2 has got some problems. It's got a narrative that doesn't quite work. It's got a world that isn't really presented very well, despite being incredibly interesting. And it's got content that fizzles out really early. But it's also got some really compelling things. The lore in that world is really deep and interesting when you actually get your teeth into it. Its raiding is probably some of the best raiding I've engaged in ever. And its gunplay is about as slick as you can expect from the best FPS makers that we've got these days. So it's a wash. Destiny 2 is a good game. I'm not gonna argue that. It's a short game, but it's a good game. Is it worth the ticket price? Probably, especially if you jump into a raid with some friends. Plug the Discord plug. Destiny 2 is not a masterpiece. In fact, it's greatly overshadowed by some of the games that came out the very same week that it launched on PC. But it's a good game. If you like shooters, you'll like Destiny 2. If you're a fan of raiding, you'll probably like Destiny 2. If you really like Destiny 1, Destiny 2 is definitely an improvement. You could do a lot worse than Bungie's latest MMORPG shooter. And I'm probably gonna keep playing it until I don't. Why, hello there, guys and gals. Good to see ya. I'm glad you made it through that video. That was an endurance test, 30 minutes. God damn it, I just have too much to say. I never shut up, it's the worst. I hope you enjoyed this video. This is the first review I've done in a while, and I'm hoping you like it. I hope to do more in the next couple of months. It's going to be awesome. If you did, I'd appreciate it. If you're new here, I'd appreciate it if you subscribe if you like this stuff, so you can keep up to date on what I'm doing. Thank you very much for watching either way, and you continue to have a great one.